relationships with others. But, I'm really curious. Let's just go over the first three examples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does a queer Asian American man
Mm-hmm.
go to a Trump rally?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you have to do to prepare yourself for that?
Yeah.
And what was your experience like?
Yeah, it was wild because like right around that time, I went to an 𝐕𝐽𝐝 Brothers concert with my then partner, and in Minnesota, in a small town. It was at a big venue though, and this group of guys basically were harassing us. I mean, they were threatening us, and they were saying, we don't want to see you holding hands. We don't want to see that shit. Cut that out. Because we were holding hands and like, with each other during a love song of a very inclusive band. I was so confused about the situation. But I think that I was not in a moment there to be curious about, hey, like, what's going on here? Like, why are you, threatening us? I was there to just enjoy the show. And I think that's an important thing about curiosity, is that it has its boundaries, it has its limits. And, your physical safety is really, really key and important. So if you don't have that, you don't, no one deserves curiosity. It is really earned, right, in many ways. So you have to have that trust in that relationship in order for that curiosity to really come alive. So we just like moved to like a different part of the venue, and we had a fun experience. But I was like coming in with this sort of experience, to the Trump rally. So I was really fearful and anxious. I was like, oh gosh, like what's going to happen? Like, am I like putting myself in another situation like this? But I went in and I, went up to, this huge line going into the Target Center Arena, the tens of thousands of people there. And I just walked up to, I didn't know anyone there. I was dressed in my like very flamboyant, colorful self. And I just like walked up to someone and I said, hey, I'm Scott. I'm not from here. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm not voting for Trump, but I'm actually a Democrat and progressive. But I want to better understand people who are voting for Trump out of true curiosity, because the only stories I hear come from the media or come from other people. But I know as a storyteller, the best place to learn about someone is to ask them yourself. We're waiting in line for 4 or 5 hours. Like, would you be open to having a conversation? And they looked at me with this, like they were so taken aback, like in a good way. They were so, well, I'm so used to people like you, in air quotes, right? Like pushing back on me or, making me feel judged because of who I'm voting for. You're actually coming in with curiosity. And they started to answer some of the questions I had about who they were, where they were from, like their origin stories. And we just started to talk. And I started to see, not just a caricature of who I thought like half of America is, but, who someone is, as a person, beyond just who they're voting for in the next election. Right? And that was like a really revealing experience. And then there was like this sort of back and forth curiosity, which I later would find in the literature, that curiosity is contagious. So when I asked them questions, they started to ask me questions. And they had never met someone like me. And they were just same thing, learning a lot from me. And I think they're caricatures of who an Asian, queer, progressive person were also. So it was like a beautiful exchange, actually. Yeah. In many of those conversations.
And it's so powerful, right? Because you're describing so many different aspects of curiosity, and, you showed up with authenticity. Like you weren't pretending to be a journalist or something else. You were just like, hey, I'm just a regular person who happens to be from a different part of the country, and I'm curious, And the other thing that I really love is that by being yourself, you gave others the permission to be themselves. But simultaneously, you also gave them a mental model of like, oh, I like Scott. He's like the person that is generally demonized in my circles, but I actually like him because when I get to know him, he's just like me. He's got friends, he likes coffee, he likes to do whatever, right? Whatever the commonalities that are there. But I want to kind of back up a little bit to something more not more powerful, but something that's really potent for a lot of our viewers and listeners, which is that, experience that you had at the concert, which was, really about lack of safety and absence of safety, in like being yourself. And in that moment, like, of course, fight, flight hits. We're like, oh my gosh, my being is threatened. Of course, as a result, we do what we need to do, which thankfully you and your partner did. But in those moments, how can curiosity help us, not immediately in that moment because our nervous system is triggered, but in processing that afterwards?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I find that when that's happened to me, or I've heard other people, experiencing something similar, they really internalize it, and they kind of remain in anger. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for me, anger is really uncomfortable.